Body scan is so helpful to connect back to our home. There's a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh that I just love. Your body is your first home. Breathing in, I arrive in my body. Breathing out, I am home. We, for some reason that I still have not untangled, spend majority of our time in our minds. And a great deal of that time is spent unhelpfully. A lot of it is very helpful, and another part of it is unhelpful. So lately, what I've noticed is I've always been a bit of a difficult sleeper since I think I was a teenager. Don't sleep very well and have to have all these tricks and tools in my toolbox for that. And the latest thing I've noticed, which is quite exciting, is as you get older, you definitely do sleep much less soundly. So you have a lot more periods of wakefulness at night. And if you're a mindfulness and meditation practitioner, you can use those opportunities to observe what's going on in your mind. What is my mind doing when it's just coming out of unconsciousness? Very powerful. But what I've noticed is I've been coaching myself. Been literally saying to myself, don't think. Don't think. Luckily, we know how to do that. We aren't always successful, but we can put our attention on the breath. We can put our attention on the body somewhere, maybe in the nose or the face or the hands or wherever it is that's your sweet spot. So for me, this is very helpful. I've noticed that. Why, yes, in fact, it's when I wake up and I'm thinking and then I start going down a line of thought, it sort of creates a sense of wakefulness instead of what I'd like, which is a sense of restfulness. So don't think has been a bit of a mantra lately. And it feels a little bit like tidying up, like putting things away for later, or putting things away until I'm ready to use them. And somebody a couple weeks ago said the way that they calm down was to go around and tidy up. In fact, I think there was consensus in that one group maybe that there were a few people who said, yeah, when I want to calm down, I tidy up. So it made me think about that. This is like a mental tidying up so that I can just get some rest. And by the way, if you know you're going to meditate first thing in the morning, it's actually easier to do because you're saying, I'm going to put this away for now, and you can come out first thing in the morning when we meditate together. It can be very helpful. Anyway, this idea of tidying up, it reminds me of something very important in the Buddhist practice. And the first time I heard this concept, I didn't. The name they use for it is a bit odd. There's this notion of purification of mind. Purification of mind. The reason I don't like that term in particular is because it implies for me, it implies that there is something, dirty like in your water and you want to purify it to make it clean. And I don't really think that's what we're talking about. But I want to read something written by Bhikkhu Bodhi. He's a great scholar who's done a lot of translation of the ancient Pali texts. Because he defines it in a nice way that's very helpful. He says, purification of mind, as understood in Buddha's teaching, is the sustained endeavor, aka daily mindfulness, the sustained endeavor to cleanse the mind of defilements, Defilements are those dark, unwholesome mental forces which run beneath the stream of consciousness. Defilements are unwholesome, dark mental forces which run beneath our consciousness, poisoning our thinking, poisoning our values, poisoning our attitudes and actions. And the chief among these defilements, so-called, are the three that the Buddha has termed the roots of evil. I call them the three poisons. Not just me, others do. Greed, hatred, and delusion, which we've spoken about. And the offshoots of this are all the variations: anger, envy, conceit, vanity, etc., etc., etc. The things that make us crazy. He continues, these defilements, so-called, the Buddha declares, lie at the bottom of all human suffering, burning within us, craving, resentment. They lay waste to hearts. They lay to waste hearts, lives, hopes, and civilizations. He further describes these mental formations as hindrances, knots tied up. Therefore, the path to untying the knots is a discipline aimed at inward cleansing. And then he moves on to explain two things, and I want to focus on the second one, but I'll mention the first one because it's what we just did. The work of purification must be undertaken in the same place where the defilements arise, in the mind itself. And the main method offered for purifying the mind is meditation, which is a carefully devised method of mental development. So again, I want to reiterate that this is not purification is not implying that what constitutes who we are, is like the stuff in the water that we have to get out of. But this is how it's described in the suttas. It's very powerful because you know that it's in your mind. You feel it, right? When you're suffering, it's in your mind. If you could just take your head and stick it in the refrigerator, you'd be fine. But the rest of, so he talks about, so he says the work of this purification, this cleansing, this movement towards freedom is undertaken through meditation, which is what we did, which is why sometimes when you meditate, when you're finished, you actually feel better. It's because we're detaching from, we're letting go of these mental knots. And that inherently is wholesome, healthy. It's inherently creating happiness because it's creating freedom. We're not bound, we're not tied up. But then, as I always say, there's the rest of the day. What do we do with the rest of our day? Well, meditation definitely carries through to the rest of the day, as I'm sure you experience. So he further writes, to eliminate defilements, we must learn to know them, to detect them at work, infiltrating and dominating our everyday thoughts and lives. So we have to have awareness of what's going on up here. And in the Nivarana Sutta, they speak, there's a very short sutta, they speak very clearly of how to work with these hindrances, these knots inside of us, to abandon these 5 hindrances. And I won't go through the 5. We did the 3, hatred, greed, and delusion. There's 5. There's all kinds of lists in the, I don't want to go through that now. But to abandon the hindrances, one should develop these frames of reference. Remain focused on the body in and of itself, being ardent, alert, and mindful. That to me sounds like a call for mindfulness. It also continues, remain focused on feelings in and of themselves when we get strong feelings, and remain focused on mental qualities in and of themselves. But the first thing to do is focus on the body in and of itself, meaning not the stories about the body, not the worries about the body, but the direct experience about the body. And I had an experience of this this week. The freedom that this practice of coming back to the body can offer. And I know each one of you has a story. But my story this week was on Tuesday night, I had to give a talk to some Buddhists. And I'm very comfortable teaching to like my peers, like here. But when faced with a room of Buddhists, I get a lot of stories cooking up, like I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not practiced enough, no. And that, as you know, that kind of insecurity can really mess with you. And I found myself walking around for the day of and the day before. Unfortunately, it was an evening talk, the day before even, and the day of, in a real state of panic in the physical body, in the mind, in the heart, as these stories repeated. And it was incredibly uncomfortable. And I even went so far as to think to myself, I actually don't think I should be a teacher of this anymore. Like, it got that uncomfortable. And additionally, it just so happened I had an appointment with a physical trainer. I bought a 10-pack. Just, this is oversharing, but I wanted to get healthy, and we've been doing a little weightlifting and strength building, right? Post-cancer, I got to take care of myself. And so I was like, oh, I've got this appointment. I got to go. Get in there. And he doesn't know anything that's going on with my panic state. And we get to doing exercises, and we're doing he likes to do these complicated things where you sit on like a ball and you hold weights and you're trying to balance yourself. And maybe you're very familiar with all this stuff, but it takes a lot of mental focus to do what he's asking. So I'm dialing in. And after 5 minutes together doing this, I felt a release. I had stopped subconsciously cogitating on my woes, and this release came. It was palpable. And it really just brought home how the practice of coming back seriously into the present moment in your body can be so powerful. Now, suffice it to say, that was a temporary fix, but it offered enough relief that then I moved into the rest of the day a little bit less. Then I said, you know what, why don't I do some yoga? And long story short, I think the class went fine. Still not my favorite thing to do, but whatever. So anyway, this is our practice, and we don't need to go to the trainer and have a complicated fitness exercise to get the relief. We can put our intention to move with mindfulness, whatever it is that we're doing next, whatever next 3 things we're doing. we can put our intention to do them mindfully. I'm going to go wash the dishes after class, and I'm going to smell the detergent. I'm going to feel the warmth of the water on my hands. I'm going to listen to the water as it trickles in the sink. This brings peace. This is how we do it. Then we forget, we get carried away, and that's fine. That's normal. And then the minute we can remember, then the next thing we're doing, putting on pants, one leg, the other leg, slowly, carefully, with mindfulness. This is peace. This is how it's done. And when you have non-peace, when you're caught and it's cooking, your wisdom is not available to you. Your wisdom is blocked. You're tied in knots. Your mind is constricted around something. When you can find those moments and come home, come there, do what you're doing with all of your awareness, it opens this space, and your wisdom fills that space. And this self-awareness, that's what comes in that space. And you can be a lot more honest with yourself too, which is really powerful. You've got some space, and you have a little insight about yourself. Something helpful you're doing, something unhelpful you're doing. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's log that insight. So if you find it hard sometimes to be mindful, it can help to actually make a verbal note of what you're doing. You know, when you're just like, gosh, I really wish I could arrive here right now. You could say, I'm picking up this glass, putting down this glass, picking up the pencil, sliding it behind my ear. That's if it's really hard, but I think most people here know what it feels like. You know how to do it. So I'm your friendly reminder.